Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next program, the intersection point where content, social, and sales collide. This is a program being produced by Strategic Communications Group. They develop integrated content marketing and sales enablement programs to help business-to-business technology, security, healthcare, and financial services clients identify sales leads, cultivate prospect relationships, and close deals. We're going to have it presented by Mark Hausman, who is President and CEO of Strategic Communications Group, and also does stand-up comedy around town and throughout the Mid-Atlantic. So maybe you'll see him on stage at another venue sometime.
Thank you, Paul. That is a true story. About 3 years ago, my wife, for my 40th birthday, bought me a class down at the Improv. Took the class, started performing stand-up comedy. What I like to refer to it as a brutally humbling experience. My first year, I actually got booed off stage twice, and those were 5-minute shows. But this year, I've kind of finally found my groove. I'm going to probably do about 35 shows this year, including next month, I will be performing at seven high school after prom shows. So if you think this is a tough audience, try 400 17 and 18-year-olds at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's a real tough audience. What I'm going to do is talk to you for a couple of minutes to provide some context before we ask our panelists to come up. And we're really going to get B2B and business to government. So I'm assuming this is going to be very much in line with all of your expectations. So when I talk about stand-up comedy and you tell people that you work in that industry, what's the first thing people usually ask you, right? Hey, you do stand-up comedy? Tell me a joke. Actually, it doesn't quite work that way. What they teach you is comedy is actually a series of stories or a series of anecdotes. You weave together 3 stories, you make a point. Each point then builds on its next, right? So usually after 5 or 6 points, you're actually able to pull together a show that usually runs about 25, 30 minutes. The challenge, though, with comedy is always to come up with stories, come up with anecdotes that are both entertaining and relevant to the audience. So as I started thinking about the Mid-Atlantic Marketing Summit, I was like, all right, I've got an audience of exceptional marketers here. What can I possibly come up with? So bear with me for about 3 minutes because I've got an interesting story for you. This story starts, as Paul indicated, I run a marketing communication, sales enablement consultancy, got a very compelling value proposition. So from time to time, we get contacted by prospective clients. So a couple of months ago, a company reached out to me. It's a large global technology company. I can't really say who it is. Its initials, though, are H&P. So they, yeah, all right, that at some point you are going to laugh today, I promise you. That was a joke, right? So they reach out to me and they say, hey, we hear you guys are doing some very interesting stuff with content, with social, with digital communications. We'd love for you to talk to our corporate team. They're going to be in Herndon, Virginia in a couple of weeks. Can we set you up for a meeting? So I drive out to the old EDS building out in Herndon and I sit down. They usher me into this long, huge conference room, right? And it's got this long, long table in it. You've been in all those conference rooms before. So they sit me down at an end of a table and I'm sitting there for about 10 minutes. And 10 minutes goes by and then their corporate social media team. There's about 6 people that walk in. And of course, I'm sitting here, and they make the decision to sit all the way down at this end of the table, because I guess that's what you do in corporate meetings. So I'm sitting here, and they're sitting there, and as a consultant for 20 years, what they teach you is you just don't dive into your pitch, right? We all know that. You got to warm it up a little bit. You got to engage with them. So I ask, hey, tell me a little bit about what content marketing, inbound marketing, social media means for your organization. And then Emma down at this end of the table, there's like 6 of them, and they all stand and they stern and they look at the senior-most person who's sitting at the head of the table, because that's what you do in these meetings. And she gives me an answer which was so insightful and so compelling and so dead on. In fact, I've kept it near and dear to me since she answered that question, so much so that I carry her answer with me wherever here it is. I carry that answer that I got with me wherever I go. And so I'm going to quote for a second here. The question is, at this global technology company, what does content, social, and digital communications mean to them? For us, social media and content is about connecting with and engaging multiple key audiences in the communities where they reside, inspiring them to champion our brand and serve as a force multiplier to promote our messages to their friends, fans, and connections. Good enough, right? So she answers that, and everyone then at this end of the table turns back and they stare at me, right? Because this is my time now, my time to shine. And this is a big possible client opportunity for us, right? I mean, I don't know how much they spend on inbound marketing and content creation and social, but it sure is a lot. And so I start thinking about all these incredible things, right? All these thoughts start rushing through my mind. I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. I don't know what college is going to cost in about a decade, but it may be $2 million. So I start thinking, man, this is a huge opportunity. And so suddenly I swell up with confidence, and I have what I like to call that Jerry Maguire moment. Does everyone remember that movie, right? Remember the beginning of the movie? You know, Tom Cruise, he like sends up all night. He's on on that corporate retreat, and he writes the mission statement, and he goes to the copier room at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and the guy with the ponytail is there, and he's making copies. He's like, man, this is really putting yourself out. Well, I get that thought, and that confidence swells upside, and they're staring at me, and this is such a huge deal for my opportunity. And what comes out of my mouth is, what the hell are you talking about? And I think everyone in this room would be surprised to know, to this day, to this moment, I have never done $1 business with HP. I don't know why. The point I'm making is, it isn't that their answer was a bad one. At the corporate level, for a lot of organizations, even some of our speakers today, it is about the brand. It is about breeding familiarity. However, for many of the content marketers, for many of the corporate and field marketers in this room who work for B2B organizations, who work for organizations that are focused in the public sector, brand is still important, but ultimately it's not what we're held accountable for. Those 3 letters, return on investment. The reality is that today, marketers are really responsible for driving sales pipeline in a meaningful and measurable way. And that's what we're going to talk a little about for the next few minutes before we introduce our panelists. So, 2 reasons why today content marketing, sales enablement are more important than ever before. The first overall trend, which is influencing every single one of our businesses, is what I like to refer to as the enlightened buyer. Last year, the Corporate Executive Board, they now go by the brand CEB, did a huge study. They interviewed thousands of buyers, both business to business and public sector. And what they found was buyers today are nearly 60% of the way through the process before they'll even talk to a vendor. They're going out and they're studying about solutions on their own. They're looking at your company. They're drawing conclusions about what their needs are and the organizations that they want to consider to make a purchase without even talking to you. And you would think, well, hey, wait, this could actually be a pretty good thing, right? Educated buyers, it's actually a disaster because what a salesperson will tell you is it commoditizes their approach. Because now you can really no longer differentiate yourself in the sales process in a one-on-one environment in terms of why your solution is better because in many cases the customer, the prospect, they want to talk about price. Last year I spoke at Polycom's user conference. Polycom's a big client of ours. I spoke at their user conference to a whole bunch of their North American sales reps. And what they talked about, their biggest frustration was by the time they actually heard from a customer, the customer was saying, I've already got a price from Cisco, can you match it? That's a real problem for marketers, right? So the enlightened buyer is one macro trend, which makes what we do incredibly more important. The second significant trend is what I like to refer to as the shift in influence. There has been a movement of advertising spend from traditional sources of credibility to search and online environments. Has anyone held a trade magazine lately? Right? It's now really more of a leaflet. So the way that these traditional sources of credibility have responded is they've cut back on the quality of their journalists and the number of their journalists. So ironically, at the same time that there is this real demand, this thirst, this desire for high-value thought leadership content in the customer prospect community, where they used to go for it isn't producing as much of it, and what they're producing isn't as good. Creates a gap in the marketplace. That's an opportunity for our companies. So, 5 best practices that we can employ today easily to accelerate the success of our content marketing programs and make them more measurable. Best practice number 1, think like a publisher. I talk to a lot of companies that have got great blog content creation programs, and they sit there and they say, gosh, nobody reads it. And then when you go and you look at what they're publishing, it's because it's press releases, it's marketing speak. It's that stuff that marketers have always put out. Guess what? No one likes to be sold to. When issuing a press release, I'm sure a lot of people read it, but really the only person who really reads it is the person who wrote it. It's the reality of the situation. When you're crafting your content strategy, you got to think like a magazine publisher. What is newsworthy? What's timely? Best practices, lessons learned. And oh, by the way, we've had a couple of speakers talk about aggregated content. I'm not an aggregated content guy. I want to be the expert. If you're selling a business-to-business solution, if you're selling into the public sector, if you've got a cloud offering, an information security offering, sure, you can aggregate some content, but you want people to think smart people work at your organization. And it's not hyping up what you do, it's providing best practices and lessons learned to help customers make smart decisions. Second best practice is promote your content through multiple channels. Content marketing is not a Kevin Costner field of dreams, build it and hope people find you. Search is incredibly important. Social networking is incredibly important. So is digital communications. Marketing automation systems are huge content hogs. I don't know if anyone uses Eloqua or Marketo or HubSpot or maybe use an email distribution system. Take the content that you're creating, for your blog, for your other thought leadership programs, and populate it into those campaigns as well. Drive people to your content. The last channel that our clients use all the time is their own salespeople. Sales reps will tell you the words they do not want to say when they're calling a prospect is, hey, this is Mark over at Strategic Communications Group. We had a great meeting a couple weeks ago, just following up. How many voice messages have you gotten with those words? Guess what happens after following up? The delete button, because you're not calling with something of value. So work with your sales reps to get them to repurpose that content so that call is, hey, we published a really interesting blog post about that topic that we discussed a couple of weeks ago. Let me send it to you. Take a look. I'd be interested in what you think about. Best practice number 3, the hardest one perhaps, collaborate with sales. There is this, I'm going to say it, there is a weird dysfunctional relationship that exists in most organizations between marketing and sales, and it's understandable. Sales reps are inherently ADD. If they weren't, they wouldn't work in sales. They don't want to do any work. So when you throw over 1,000 leads from the most recent trade show, you're asking them to do work. No, their preference is, I want to pick up the phone, I want to call someone, and someone's going to say, great, I'm ready to buy. Well, we know it doesn't happen that way. What sales reps will tell you from a marketer, in terms of marketers, is, yeah, you know what, those people in marketing, I have no idea what the heck it is that they do. Right? They walk around the office, they have meetings, and all kinds of stuff, right? But at the end of the day, I just need them for pens and mouse pads and brochures. That's all they do, right? Come on, raise your hand. We all know that's the reality of the situation. You know what? Let's take ownership of the relationship. If you can engage with sales and say, look, I'm putting in place a program that can help you not just identify leads, but cultivate those leads more quickly, guess what? They're going to engage with you. They're going to respect you a little bit more. If you're talking just about brand, if you're talking just about awareness, things they can't touch, things they can't measure, man, the lights go off. You got to be able to collaborate with sales because they can provide a lot of great insight into what you should be writing about in your content because they talk to customers and prospects every day. I once had a meeting, it was probably about 2 years ago, with a client. And it's not an active client any longer because I was going in to present our program to their sales organization, and the marketer actually said to me, hey, you know, when you're talking to sales, use small words. Small words. I'm like, small words, like one syllable? What? And yeah, well, you know, they really don't understand things. And I'm like, come on. No wonder they just want you for mouse pads, right? We got to break through that barrier. Best practice number 4, and you've heard this from a couple of other speakers, study the analytics. There are a lot of great free analytic tools. Google Analytics is a really good one. My partner Shani is here today. She'll tell me how much she loves What's Up, right? There are some great analytic tools out there. People tell you what they think by how they spend their time. Nobody's going to tell you they have budget. Nobody's going to tell you they have need because they don't like being sold to. But if you look at the analytics on your blog site or your website or whatever content marketing program you have, it tells you a lot about what's going on in the marketplace. We have clients where we can look at the analytics report, talk to their salespeople to understand who's in the pipeline, and you can clearly see the intersection. Which leads to the next best practice, which is turn analytics into actionable sales content. I can't tell you how many times I've been in meetings where I've said, wow, we're looking at the analytics. Look at these great organizations, these great financial services companies that have visited our site. And everyone kind of looks around and goes, wow, that's great. We got to do one more step than that and ask the questions like, hey, if Bank of America is coming to our site and reading about mobile security, maybe they have a need. Nobody's reading your blog because it's more interesting than ESPN the magazine. They're not. So if they're reading about a specific topic, the action has got to be, wow, I got to walk down the hall and I got to talk to my sales leader to say, here's the traffic, here are the trends that we're seeing in terms of readership. What do we think this means? And how can we then take action to help that specific sales rep achieve some type of outcome? I know this is really tactical, and I know this takes work. But this really does elevate the return on investment from your marketing spend to a, hey, I think this is working, to let's not have a debate. Let's look at the numbers. This is how my program is impacting revenue touch. That's ultimately how we're going to be respected as marketers. So those are my 5 best practices. I was going to stop there, but Paul, who I've got a great relationship with, said, you know what? These are really important people to me. I want you to hit me with one more bonus tip. So here it is, a bonus tip, and I'm going to use a story to illustrate this one. Hunter is 10 years old, Landon is 8. I actually know these children. They're actually my children. They live in my house. Okay? So here's the story. A couple years ago, so I coached Hunter, his older one, I coached his youth baseball team. And I don't know if you watch youth baseball, right? It's a 4th grade team now, but at the time it was a 3rd grade team. It doesn't really look like baseball at that point, right? So I'm coaching baseball, right? And we're doing a lot of business with Microsoft at the time. And we have a game Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock. Microsoft's based out on the West Coast, and one of their senior marketers said, you know what, I need you for this conference call. I said, look, it's right in the middle of my kid's game. I'm one of the coaches. What do you say we reschedule? I'll do it later. I'll do it earlier. I'll do it on a Saturday morning. He's like, no, the call's got to be at this time. And I was really stressed out about it. I ultimately decided, you know what, I'm not going to do the call. I'm going to go to the baseball game instead. Microsoft isn't a client of mine today. Now, I don't think that was exactly the reason, but it certainly did contribute that, impacted the relationship. Really stressed about this situation. So I go to this game, I go to this baseball game, and my son Hunter, who's left-handed, when you're playing baseball at this age, the only way you possibly get out is as a left-handed hitter, you dribble the ball to the first baseman, who fields it and steps on the bag. So this poor kid is the only kid on his team that's gotten out all year, right? So he gets up to bat, and I'm standing there at third base. I'm the third base coach, and it's like that Natural. Has anyone seen The Natural, that moment? He just strokes one into the outfield. I mean, it's just this incredible hit, right? And again, youth baseball, if the ball goes out into the outfield, it ain't coming back, right? So, I mean, this game was in Bethesda. This ball might have as well rolled to Rockville. So it's rolling around out in the outfield. And he starts running around first base, and he starts running around second base, and I'm there at third base. And he has this incredible awkward slide into third base. And the ball's still out in the outfield. I say, Hunter, what are you doing? Why don't you go home? And he said, you know what? He's like, I'm just going to stand here with you, Dad. And he winked at me. I know, it's a nice story, isn't it? The point I'm getting to is, 2 years later, I have no idea what that call with Microsoft was about, but I have that wink. And I wrote a blog post about it the next day. And I was going through with a contract negotiation with another potential client, which was really kind of dicey. There were some issues going on in the contract. And that client called me and he said, you know, I read your blog post. I've got 4 kids as well. We've got to figure out a way to work this out. What I'm getting to is this with your content. Man, it's so lawyered up, right? People write crap. They write in ways that nobody talks. If you cover real issues and you put yourself out there and you have an opinion, not everyone will agree with you, but they will engage with you and they'll respect you for it. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, people do business with people that they know and trust. And what we are in the business of is building know and trust. All right. Let me ask our exceptional panelists to join me up here now, okay? And what I'd like you to do as they make their way to the stage is I've shared a couple of best practices with you. What I'd like you to do is really challenge them as they talk about their specific programs, about how they are implementing these best practices. So I didn't pick these 4 marketers randomly. Based on relationships that I have in the market and some of the interesting programs that I've seen, I've selected them because they're all working on very interesting programs. All right, so let's start by asking each of our panelists very briefly to introduce who they are, the company that they work for, and if they want to reference any campaigns that they've been working on, that'd be great. And Kate, let's start with you.
Great. Kate Sloanacre. I work for a company called Privia Health. It is a startup. I also previously worked for Cvent. They are out in the lobby there. And I worked on many, many things over the course of my marketing career. Working at startups, you wind up getting involved in everything. So I learned along the way to integrate social later with content marketing as that came about for product marketing in technology. So that's my primary focus, and that's what I'm doing at Privia Health now.
Awesome. Stacy?
Hi, I'm Stacy Piper, and I work for ICF International. We're a government contracting firm based in Fairfax. I would say that I kind of launched thought leadership marketing at ICF about 12 years ago, and now I'm trying to change the conversation to content marketing. And so that's been really interesting. And doing things like digital retargeting, sponsored content, Pinterest campaigns, and things like that to influence Fed pipeline.
Okay. Julie?
Good morning. I'm still a little choked up from your story, I have to tell you.
It is.
It's like the second time I've cried today, and the first was the Old Bay commercial. So
I can put this back up there. And don't mistake, so the little one who looks like an angel up there, he's no angel. Just say that. Okay.
Cute story. My name is Julie Zeffert. I'm the Vice President of Marketing Communications for Ironbow Technologies. We are an information technology solution provider, primarily in the federal space. We have a commercial arm as well. Federal represents about 93% of our business. So much like Stacy, we have a unique market. We've had a social program stood up for the last about 3 years now, and so it's been a really exciting journey for us. In our space in particular, we were really early adopters.
Okay. Elena.
Hi, I'm Helena Brito. I am with FireEye. I'm a social media marketer, but actually Mandiant was acquired by FireEye in January of this year. So for 4 years, I was with Mandiant, growing their social media program primarily through social channels and the blog. In the beginning, it was really targeting technical audiences, but over the years, I'm proud to say that we've been reaching the C-suite and using that to help sales. So I'm really excited to bring that to the table at FireEye and show them how you can bridge social and sales.
Great. All right, let's start with a first question for Kate. And this is something that we've talked about, over the last couple of months. So as we all know, the world for marketers is changing very fast in terms of a lot of sea shift, in terms of what we're held accountable for, a lot of new technologies and trends. So Kate, can you talk a little bit about, as a senior level marketer now, as part of the executive leadership team at Privia Health, how do you constantly go through the process of assessing all that marketing stuff that's out there, all those technologies, all those trends, and making decisions about how they specifically apply to the program that you're building at your company?
Sure. So what it all comes back to is kind of the value of the content. And of course, you need to see where your audiences are. For example, on social media, I work with doctors now. So when doctors are on social media, they're not necessarily on social media as physicians. They don't really want to be approached as a physician. They would prefer to be approached in a personal way. So you really need to find your channel and kind of evaluate your audience and step in their shoes and see how they would like to utilize that channel. So we've done a lot of evaluating and actually found more niche channels to push our marketing through. And then that goes to the second kind of evaluation of how you can leverage that content through that channel, whether it's video marketing or social, but how that content is going to be digested, I feel like is an even more important piece of the puzzle. But when we are evaluating, again, going back to one of your best practices, it's all about analytics and doing small tests. So what I like to do to continue doing innovative things and kind of find that secret sauce to your marketing formula is do the small tests, through a decent sized sample and be able to gauge success that way and experiment. I mean, many times throughout my career, I didn't think that some of our ideas would really catch on, and some of those tended to be the most explosive. So even if it's happening in another industry and you don't think it's going to be applicable to your audience, I encourage you to experiment.
Okay. Stacy, this is a question for you. Our speaker at McCormick talked about one of the challenges that she faces in terms of maturing and evolving her organization to accept social and digital communications type activities. Now, ICF, as many of you may know, is a billion-dollar publicly traded government services organization, very innovative in terms of the types of things that you do for your customers, but I'm assuming at some level it's been a little bit of a challenge for you to introduce Pinterest, to introduce content creation, to introduce some of these new emerging technologies. Can you talk a little bit about how you've gone through that process, kind of the change internally and educating your internal audiences?
Yeah. So it's definitely at different maturity levels in different parts of our business. But I would say that my approach and the approach that I ask my team to take is to be evolutionary, not revolutionary. And there's three things that I try to do to kind of encourage adoption. I try to translate what's happening in the B2C and B2B world in marketing to my business and use like lay terms. So like when I did a digital retargeting campaign last year, God knows I couldn't call it retargeting. I could not tell them that I was placing cookies on our customers and prospects' machines and serving them ads somewhere else. I would have never gotten budget for it. So I had to explain to them just what it was like to meet the customer where they were, that people were no longer trusting content on our website. And so I had to use kind of language they would understand, not the one-syllable words that you were saying earlier. I also try to customize kind of these marketing best practices and emerging technology trends for my target audience. And I use my Fed pipeline to kind of sequence my content calendar, my editorial calendar. So I don't do everything as you read in content marketing books and that I learned, when I was working on my master's degree. I have to tweak it for what makes sense for my business at the stage it's in and for my target audience based on what their behaviors are. And last, like Kay said, is pilot. Find some progressive leaders in the company who are willing to take some risks, experiment, and show some early wins.
Great. That is a super lead-in to Julie for the question that I have for you. So you referenced before with a couple of your programs, you actually stood up in 2011. So Ironbow Technologies was very much an innovator and an early adopter in terms of content and social media and digital communications. And I know a lot of your success has been predicated upon the fact that you've got a great relationship with your CEO and you've got great relationships with other members of the leadership team. Can you talk a little bit about, as a marketer, how have you gone through the process with your CEO, who also fancies himself as a marketer, by the way?
He does. He got an A. He reminds me often.
Right. So how have you gone through the process of working with your CEO to keep him tuned into the innovative things that you and your marketing team are doing at Ironbow?
Well, every culture is different, and you have to take into account the personalities that you're dealing with. I think the most important factor for us was I think both myself and my entire team had built a considerable amount of credibility with our leadership team. They trusted us because we took care of the tactical day-to-day activities. Mark always tells me I'm reluctant to be candid about this. We do it very well. I think that we really have a considerable amount of respect from our team. And we had actually just gone through a rebrand, so which went well. So on the heels of that, we approached our CEO with a plan. And we had a vision for what we wanted it to be a few years down the road, because we found a Sherpa that really guided us through what we should be looking to do. But we've gradually rolled it out to our CEO and our other leadership team, because you don't want to overwhelm them. But I think for my CEO in particular, who's an accountant by trade, there was a leap of faith for him. His feeling was, look, it sounds like you're not going to be able to show me a return on investment out of the gate. But you've come through for me before. You take your fiduciary responsibility very seriously. So, I'm going to back you up on this. And frankly, that's been the course for the last couple of years, that there was a lot of, I trust you, and because you deliver here, so I'm going to let you do this because I hire people and surround myself with talent that I believe to be excellent, just like on my team. And when I get a recommendation from someone on my team, even if I don't quite understand it or it doesn't make sense to me, or it may be a little while before I see the return on investment, because I trust them so much, I'm inclined to support it.
That's great. So a lot of the discussion today has been around the issue of content and how challenging it is for some organizations to find and create content. Our next panelist works in an industry, information and network security, where there sure is a lot of content and there are a lot of opinions, both inside your company as well as outside your company, and there are a lot of thought leaders out there. So Helena, can you talk to us a little bit about what you've been doing from a content perspective and how you just organize all the stuff, all the possible things that you could be talking about at FireEye, and present it to your key audiences in a really kind of managed and measurable way?
Sure. So one thing that I find as a social media marketer is I kind of joke and say people probably think we just tweet once an hour and that's kind of our job. But connecting social with sales, I think, is the key to really showing the value of social and what it brings to the organization as a whole. So as a social marketer or as a marketer, you probably find that you get a lot of content. Everyone's like, I got this blog post that I want to do. It's on X, Y, and Z. I think it's the next biggest thing. Everybody thinks their blog post is the next biggest thing. It needs to go up right away. Why are we not already promoting it? Why is it not already up? But you have to take that time to say, listen, I need to work with sales. I need to work with my programs team to let them know ahead of time what's going on so that we can equip them to do the right promoting, to really get the most bang out of your buck for these blog posts. So the thing that works for me, and I'll have to speak on behalf of more the Mandiant side because I have more of a history with that on the ammunition blog, is taking that content and saying, okay, what are we going to focus on each month? I call it monthly themes, editorial calendar, but really it's just a good way to organize all of this content that we're getting day in and day out and saying, okay, in the month of March, we're going to concentrate on the financial industry. So, I know you want to do a post on healthcare, but we're going to target that the next month. So if you can wait, we'll have that out that month. But for the month of March, let's say we're doing the financial industry. So we're going to go out and get a guest blogger. The guest blogger, I don't want them to talk about Mandiant. I don't really want them to talk about, the company at all. I want them to talk about what's impacting the financial industry when it comes to targeted cyber attacks, what's going on. I might want to do a post on the technical side of the financial industry, and then one that speaks more to the CISO. So you're getting that really full, rich picture for that month. That not only helps out with blog traffic, we can see, did we get an increase from the financial industry that month? So that really gets a really richer picture for the marketing team instead of just saying, hey, our blog traffic went up. Well, that's great. What is that really showing you in the end, though? But also working with our programs team. They can say, hey, they're doing that in the month of March. In April, we're going to do an email campaign to our customers where we're trying to do upsell opportunity for our financial customers, showing them we have thought leaders. We really understand the issues that they're going through. Then we can do another email campaign that's targeting prospects. And we can then work with our inside sales team and say, listen, they're getting these posts. They're understanding that we get the issues. That hopefully builds the sales pipeline. So at that point, you're getting a richer picture. The content really then is meaningful. And people then understand why you're waiting to post their information. Instead of saying, we don't have time, we say, no, it makes sense, it's perfect. Let's hold on it and really make it count.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to ask each panelist to do a fill-in-the-blank question, okay? So one of the things that we've seen from the marketers who have taken the stage today is that today's marketing job is dramatically different than years past. What I always like to say is, marketing was a certain way for several decades, and then in the last 36 months, things have basically been turned on its head a little bit. So how would you answer this question? And Kate, let's start with you. Today's successful marketer is exceptional at fill-in-the-blank.
Integration.
Okay.
So tying campaigns into one another. For example, we did an ebook at one point that had tweetable chunks within the ebook. We were able to get a lot of viral lift through social media off of just making social easier as someone was reading through our content. It was also insightful to see what kind of tweetable moments we thought were valuable, really were valuable to our readers, and what our audience really wanted to see. And then they would add their own comments on social media. So not only were they, doing marketing for us, but it was also interesting to see kind of how they felt like it applied to them. And so we wound up doing this ebook into separate chapters, and it gave us a lot of insight for the next ebook to see what resonated within, the first chapter, the second chapter. So that integration, just as an example, was really valuable on honing that campaign. And then we were able to repurpose in different channels and just take an infographic from the ebook and leverage it that way. And it turned into a video as well. So you don't always have to make up new content and new ideas. You just need to structure it appropriately for the channel. So I think the integration part is key.
And I'm assuming that integration, the repurposing of content, obviously then extended your budget.
It did, and you can, there's always ways to kind of, make it into, a longer campaign and drip things out, so you wind up getting a lot of value for it and not killing your budget all in a 3-month time span. But integration would also go into, if you're using tools like Eloqua and Marketo and lead nurturing, using that content that you're integrating to drip out through those channels, and then also to tie it back into sales and have them understand, what content is being digested, how it's being digested, giving them insight on what the behaviors are, and making sure they understand, as a marketing team, what your mission is, and then how that's going to tie into their bottom line ultimately.
Yeah. All right, Stacey, question to you. So today's exceptional marketer, today's successful marketer is exceptional at?
Making it easier for sellers to sell.
Okay. I like that theme.
That's, it's got me a lot of trust at the company, and it's really been a game changer. So for that, it's facilitating just the general alignment between sales and marketing. It's, having the editorial calendar and content be reflective of the pipeline we're trying to influence, whether it's by, the topics and messages and themes, or whether it's the target audience that we're trying to touch. and focusing on strategies and tactics that will actually drive business growth, and feeding customer insights that we have from the strategies and tactics and channels we're using back into the sales force.
So it sounds like a lot of your focus, marketers certainly like to play at the high level in terms of developing brand strategy and positioning, but it sounds like a lot of this trust building is really created on a deal-by-deal basis, that you'll work very tactically with a sales team or a sales rep on a specific opportunity or a specific customer account or a specific partner relationship and really demonstrate how you're driving pipeline tactically. Is that?
Yeah, our approaches are very, deal specific, capture support, kind of small budgets, and very targeted messaging, content, audience, small populations.
Okay, Julie, your turn. So today's successful marketer is exceptional at?
You told me I could be honest, right? So I tell you what I really think is that...
As compared to the Council of Lying, yes.
Well, there's...
This audience demands it.
Sure. So my feeling is that the most important skill that a marketer can bring to the table these days is a very well-honed ability to tap into their intuitive tool or skills, first and foremost, because I think there's a reason why you have such a crowded house here today. We're all looking for help, and there's a time of unprecedented change. You hear it all the time. It becomes, cliche these days. You've got a data-driven organization, and by the way, we also want you to be the creative, mind trust that we've always counted on you to be. You need to be carrying out events. They need to be amazing. But at the same time, I want that Wall Street background. Everything is being asked of one team now, and that's exciting and that's great. But the most important tool that we have, especially at times of change and confusion, is your intuition. And I know for me, before I make any choice in any part of life, but certainly in my professional world now, I know intuitively what is the right way to go, and I trust that. And I remember to include that as a data point when I also consider what else I'm getting from Google Analytics, or what aesthetically looks right, or what have you. That is as important a factor in making any choice, and I would ask the same from my team, that they build that in.
Awesome. Okay, Helena, got to come up with something good here, right? So today's successful marketer is exceptional at?
Storytelling. And I say that because for me, what really excites me when I work with different departments and hearing, what are their pain points, what kind of messaging they want to get out, which products or services they're trying to push out. It's really telling that rich story, getting behind, which team members want to get out in the limelight. And, either they want to go on a webinar, write a blog post, do a series, a podcast, and it's really working with them and showing how we can just create this entire story around. It's not just, we're going to just do this data sheet, and it's just this data sheet, and that's all that sales needs. No, they need to tell that richer story. And I think over the years we've seen why content marketing is so key and so important is because, like you said, by the time they come to our sales team, they've already done all the research. So I want to make sure that our corporate blogs, both FireEye and Mandiant, I want CISOs on there daily reading what's going on. We're going to be at these trade shows. I'm not going to talk about, come to our booth and we've got these demos. I want to say, you've got these issues, here's how we can help, and we have the right solutions for you. We have these presenters there, and they're going to be talking about these issues. Come and meet them and find out who they are. I think that's such a big thing. If you can tell that richer story, I think it only helps you out in the end when they are ready to make that buying decision.
And by CISO, what she means is Chief Information Security Officer. So that's basically who FireEye is selling to. Let me ask you one quick follow-on question to that. So in telling stories and narrative, I'm assuming that relates to the point that you brought up before about creating a content strategy and defining editorial themes and thinking like a publisher. Can you expand upon any lessons learned? I mean, your blog, Ammunition, is incredibly well-respected and well-read in the information security marketplace. How is the editorial, how is the story today different than it was a year ago based on what you've learned?
Based on what I've learned, I find that you can't be afraid to go after guest bloggers. I think when you have the opportunity to really get guests and to present that to your marketing team or present that to your CEO that you want these guests on your corporate blog, if you phrase it correctly and you say, we don't want you to promote our company, we want you to talk about the issues at hand in your industry, I think then they really kind of understand how that helps your company out, and you end up building these relationships. We actually did a podcast last year with the CISO at Neiman Marcus, and now we have that relationship, and he always says, if you ever want to do another one, let me know. So that's a huge thing that we can build on that relationship. They could end up purchasing our products in the future. So it's just not letting them be afraid to go after guest bloggers, I think, is the biggest thing.
Great. We've got a few more minutes for just a couple of questions. And so I'm not sure if we've got a microphone. If we don't have a microphone and you've got a question, maybe you could stand up and scream it at the top of your lungs. So gentlemen, sir in the back.
I have a question for Ona. I heard you say that you had a lot of success targeting the C-suite. Can you talk about that and how you came up with campaigns and I guess evolve those campaigns from targeting mid-level folks to C-suite?
Sure. So one thing I was big on is kind of getting to know a few people in each department, and also not being afraid to go to your executives and coming up with ideas. I kind of knock on their doors all the time, like, hey, I'm excited, I got this idea, and they're like, oh boy, come and sit down. No, but it ends up being good, I swear, I think. No, but they keep inviting me back, so it must be working. No, so one thing I'm really lucky to have is we have a lot of bloggers in our own company that kind of blog on their own time, and one is Richard Baitlick, and he's really, really well known in the information security industry. So a while back when he started at Mandiant, now FireEye, I said, listen, Richard, I want to kind of tell your story through our blogs, and he said, I love it. What are some ideas we can do? And I just sat and talked with him for a while and said, what are the key issues you're finding that the C-suite are not understanding? How can we tell that story at a high level? Because they're not technical. They need to understand this at a higher level. And through that, we've been able, each month, he's on there, he's telling a different perspective of that story. And that's one way that we've been able to do it. So I would say, really get to know your executive team. Let them know what your ideas are, what your goals are, and I think you can start telling that story because they're at that level, so they know how to share that at that level.
Let me ask the panel this question as well, because I think some of the things that Helena has said is really interesting in terms of getting guest bloggers, and she's focused like on this Chief Information Security Officer at Neiman Marcus, and that's a great score for FireEye to have that contributed content. But each of your companies has very important partners, I'm assuming as well, and I know specifically at Ironbow you've got a couple of very close partners that you go to market with. Julie, can you talk a little bit about how you've reached out to your own partner community and gotten them involved in some of the programs that you've stood up?
Sure, and that's a recent evolution for us. We really spent a couple of years building a very solid foundation, and we're intentional about making sure that the voice that you heard on our blogs was our own voice, our thought leaders. Now we have a very valuable piece of real estate, and I will tell you that our partner community is just clamoring to participate. And the woman that heads up partner marketing on our team is here, and she will tell you that it is, we're popular at the party right now because we're opening the doors and being very strategic in terms of who we invite. It's not just a matter of whether you can pay to play. We want to make sure that the content that they'd like to share on our blog is consistent with our editorial calendar, our strategy, and is going to move us forward. We have a really popular blogs right now, and that's due to the foundation that we've laid.
And you feel that it's been able to help your organization differentiate itself with partners because, obviously that the more supportive they are of the things that you're doing, the more successful that relationship's going to be.
It does. And I'll tell you, we've had, the heads of even sales organizations recently of one of our technology partners who approached us and said, none of our other partners are doing this like you are. And I know, and that resonates also with my CEO. That really speaks volumes to the head of sales who says, wow, that really is a differentiator. They get that that makes us stand out and makes a Dell or an HP, who I'm sure we can get you engaged with again, want to do business with them.
Yeah.
It's all right.
No, I always like to tell companies, a lot of organizations pride themselves on innovation because it just happens to be a bullet point on their corporate presentation. You really need to do some things that are different from your competitors and not just talk about innovation, but demonstrate that through everything that you do as an organization, both the work that you do for your customers as well as how you go to market. So Stacey, I know ICF has also got a very, very extensive, robust partner community. You want to comment on that at all? Or?
It made me think of something different when you said that.
Even
and
better.
That is, so we're this kind of stodgy, slow-moving B2G firm. So, innovating is kind of like a sea change and redirecting the battleship. And so one thing that helped in kind of a partner relationship was last year in meeting with one of our business leaders, I was able to determine that he was kind of the perfect person to be a blogger. And so even though the company isn't yet there to want its own corporate blog, I was able to get him set up and trained to create his own blog where he self-identifies as being with the firm, but he's blogging his own thoughts. And so he's a former chief human capital officer in the government, and he leads our organizational learning business unit. But he's been picked up on, Fed News Radio, TOP. He's being reprinted in Huffington Post, Washington Post, GovExec, AOL Gov. And it's kind of a safe environment for the company executives to see what blogging can do. And, as a corporate voice, what we're doing is we're training him, we're teaching him how to pitch his blog posts to different media outlets. We're teaching him how to use his pipeline to develop an editorial calendar and how to glean insights from the data that he gets from WordPress into an actionable sales plan.
Wow.
And, the notion that it's not that risky to blog or to let your employees kind of have a voice that doesn't have to go through a rigorous approval process as a publicly traded company has been really, really exciting, and I think it will help move the dial. So we'll one day have a corporate blog too.
Okay. Let me ask Kate one more question, and then we'll go to another audience question. So I'm going to embarrass Kate for a second and say that she was personally responsible for CVent's successful IPO. It's not true. It's being taped, so that is actually not true. But although she did contribute in a very, very good way. So you went from CVent, which was an incredibly fast-growing company that achieved a successful public offering and had a certain amount of size and organization and structure, to a new environment now, which is still growth-oriented, but I'm assuming you don't have as many people running around and as much resources as you had at CVent. Can you talk a little bit? A lot of our audience, I'm assuming, has worked in different environments, yet may work in an organization now where the marketing department is a team of one. Or maybe it's them and they've got a consultant, or maybe they've got a little bit of help, but they don't have a 40-person marketing organization. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you've constructed and created basically a marketing group from the ground up at an organization, kind of like changing the tires on a car when you're traveling 60 miles per hour down the Dulles Toll Road?
Sure, yeah. So, I think the biggest thing is making the decision early on with your executive team if you're going to have organic growth and hire internally those resources, or if you're going to leverage outside resources and grow that way. I think the two different types of organizations can be very different and will require different skill sets from you, whether it's management and teaching. And CVent was a very organically grown group, and now my new company, Privia Health, I have the opportunity to look and leverage and source resources elsewhere, which is nice and a good change. But I think one thing that kind of ties into the question that we were all answering and related to just how to leverage partners and how to do it in a cost-effective way, leverage your clients. A lot of times, I've found that particularly in this new business, that our audience wants to hear from other physicians, other like-minded people. They want to understand the pain points from someone who lives and breathes it every day. So if you can facilitate content in that way, through clients, a lot of times they're happy to help you if you've obviously provided a good experience for them. They're happy to help you, and they're excited to kind of share with their colleagues and have that opportunity. So take advantage of that. It's a very cheap way of doing things, and then there's always resources that you can leverage, whether it's freelancers. I built up a very large freelancer community for CVent when we started our blog in 2008, simply because we couldn't generate 10 blog posts a day on meeting and event planning. It just wasn't possible to do that. So leveraging that and leveraging your internal resources and your clients it was, I think, a good tip. And that's something when you're relationship marketing is very important in this new business that I'm in. So really, they don't want to hear from our C-suite. They don't want to hear from me. They don't want to hear from someone who can't relate to them. They want to hear from, another physician.
Okay. We have any more questions? Okay.
Hi.
Right here.
My question is for Stacy. I work in a company that has 2 branches, one commercial and one federal, and I work on the marketing just for the commercial. So my question is, what can I tell to my CEO tomorrow to foster some more start marketing activities for the federal?
Oh boy,
Good question. Yeah, and we are also, have a business unit that is commercial as well. I think that it would be kind of that they're not so different. The tactics and channels and theories about providing valuable content and storytelling and kind of meeting the customers where they are. It's no longer build it, they will come. All of those things hold true no matter the sector. What's just important is to define your business and marketing objectives. So like our commercial VP of marketing, she's developing content marketing programs and using the same tools, systems, channels, and ops team that I use. But she's generating leads, and I'm influencing pipelines. So our measures are different, and you have to have, and our cycle is so different, right? I'm working capture 18 months in advance in the federal space. You're not going to see ROI until much later. But the investment that you have to make in federal marketing is about, I would say, a quarter of what you have to make in commercial marketing, because I don't have the responsibility of putting leads into the pipeline and qualifying leads. So you just have to be comfortable that there's a different set of metrics and a longer wait to see return. But when you get the return, the deals that I'm working capture on are, $60 million a pop. So my campaign costs $4,000. There's low risk to try it, and we have to wait 18 months to see if it works. But we have that trust built up, so people are willing to wait and try and see.
So we are out of time. I can tell you each of these marketers is incredibly approachable. I think I've asked them and they've agreed to stick around for a little bit. So if you have any additional questions or follow on, I encourage you to seek them out. They will be happy to share with you specific other ideas and best practices, and I know they're really interested in having conversations. So I want to thank each of you personally for that. And if you have a continued interest in this topic, not only do I perform stand-up comedy, I've also written a book. It's called The Intersection Point. It has got all kinds of additional best practices and lessons learned based on our experiences working with organizations like yours. You can find it at modernmarketingtoday.com. Modern Marketing Today is an online magazine written specifically for marketers in the business-to-business and public sector. It's free to subscribe to as well. So if you go to modernmarketingtoday.com, you can download The Intersection Point, a complimentary copy. You don't even have to tell us who you are. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful conference. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you all. Very good.